You might not be happy that it's cold outside, but if you are a big fan of Runza, we are all winning. I think this is two straight Tuesdays on Temperature Tuesday that the 6 a.m. temp has been 0 or worse.
So it's going to be -7.
Let's go, baby.
Say it ain't so.
Let's welcome in Brian Christopherson from Husker247. Now that the college football season is over, BC's about to go on a 7-month vacation.
Heck yeah, dude.
So we get him for the last time. Good morning.
Good morning. Do you think that's part of the portal recruitment of guys is the Temperature Tuesday deal? Do they throw that into the mix?
It could be. Do you remember when NIL started and like the first couple of deals were players doing like telling people to go to the Runza app?
Oh.
They were getting like $50 to do like a social media post to go to the Runza app and get like a, buy one, get one Runza.
Yes, I do remember that. And I don't blame the kid. I mean, I would do it too for $50, or I'd do it for like a free combo meal. If they're like, we'll give you like a free combo meal once a month, I would be up for that.
You think Amigos is like, look, Jeff Sims isn't here anymore. We need a new combo guy. We need someone else to sell our crispy burrito to.
Though, I respect. I know Matt Rhule did too. Obviously Jeff Sims was an example where it went sideways pretty quickly into that season, but there were advertised, firms or companies that stuck with him.
Yeah.
And I give credit to that. That's loyalty there.
So last night, and Ohio State is the champion. Back-to-back years, the Big Ten has won the national championship. Back-to-back years, Nebraska has played the national champion in the regular season. It can be a copycat sport on the field and off the field. What do you think of Ohio State's run to win this national championship in the new era of college football that other schools today and moving forward will try and replicate, either on or off the field?
Well, you got to be willing to throw some dollars around. I mean, that's just part of it. Ohio State's roster all of last offseason was talked about in that regard, how much they were willing to give up. But you know what? They also had development of guys within their program that were in their third or fourth year, veterans who in some key spots stuck around, and they got their best football. You've got to be willing to throw elbows in the NIL game and, be willing to pay some. And you've also got to be, that whole development thing doesn't just go out the window. You still got to, especially in the trenches, we talk about this all the time. You've got to have those guys in their third and fourth year start to rise up. And I mean, give them credit just within the lines. When they played Nebraska in the middle of the season, Nebraska owned their offensive line that day. I mean, that was a sort of a beatdown in the trenches. And, at that point, if you had asked just a Husker fan, what do you think of Ohio State's championship chances? They would have said no way.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept getting better. And I know they had the tough one at Michigan, but, there is a part you can really respect beyond they paid their guys a lot of money and all this stuff. They can get whoever they want. They're Ohio State. They also just had a good team mentality and bought into something together. And it turned out that loss to Michigan, I think, was a real uniting factor for them. We're not going out like this. We have too many, top end players to have that be the legacy of this season. And props to them for getting it together and, putting on everybody here in the playoffs.
Brian, last 2 years, three of the four teams who've been in the national championship game are currently in the Big Ten. Do you think the Big Ten going back to back with Michigan and Ohio State as the national champs, does that affect the outlook of the conference to the point where it benefits teams within that conference to get some leeway when it comes to final college football playoff rankings?
I think it's a great question and point, because you guys will remember when Matt Rhule said Big Ten should get 4 in back at media days. He took some flack, of course, from Feinbaum and that part of the country. And it ended up playing out that they got 4 in, and there was a lot of arrows shot at the league the first week in Indiana, sort of, losing to Notre Dame brought some of that out of people just because Indiana is not a known name. But I think as the playoffs work their way to the finish, absolutely, I believe it helps going forward, as far as getting 4 teams in. And, it's the SEC that got dinged here this bowl cycle, playoff cycle. And not that that's going to keep them from getting 4 in the future either, but I think it definitely is going to aid the Big Ten. There's no question about it.
Hey, 6 weeks from today, Ohio State begins spring practice. Okay, they just went through a gauntlet of a season where they played a lot of football, more football than they've ever played. We're kind of jonesing for spring football around here to see the new guys and to see how this is all going to work. It's kind of the appetizer. But as the calendar changes, the NFL wants to add a week. College football might start earlier. What do you think moving forward with a 105-man roster, which is not fully at 105 on April 1st, what do you think, BC, spring football and college football looks like moving forward?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I haven't thought about how much it's going to shift. Maybe you have some ideas in asking that. I still think you've got to really see what you have with certain guys, and obviously there is that portal window for guys to still make decisions afterwards. So I think it's got to be a really competitive cycle where you're hitting and you're seeing how physical certain guys are at spots and really testing their mentality and how much they love this game. I think in some ways, I would argue you actually ramp it up and see who's got the goods, but that is going to be a balance that coaches have to weigh now with some rosters that have dwindled, in Nebraska's case quite considerably. So we'll see, especially though that, as you mentioned, the teams that just finished up. And I was thinking of Ohio State. It feels like it's always reloading, and Penn State does a pretty good job of it. But I wonder how Penn State comes out of going so long into January, where you're maybe not able to have your attention as much on some of the portal happenings. And I'm curious, with Arizona State, how did they manage their roster as they were playing in the playoffs, and what does that look like for the next year? So I guess the thing I've wondered the most about is, are there going to be some teams that aren't the usual powers, like Arizona State and Indiana, for example? If they go into the playoffs and get into it a week or two, how does that affect them the next season? Are they able to even come close to what they did?
Sure.
Not just because of the wear and tear, but because of your roster management and those critical months. So I'll admit I haven't thought as much about the spring question you asked, but that's what I wonder about, is some of those teams that aren't Ohio State that pop in at the 9 or 10 seed, and we thought were kind of unusual to be in the playoffs. What are they going to look like the next year after trying to balance all of this at the same time? That'll be interesting to me.
Well, that's funny because I'm going to ask you this, Brian. I'm looking at these two teams, and I know that Bill Belichick got a lot of flack a couple of it had to be 6-7 years ago when he won a Super Bowl and goes, "Well, look, we're 5 weeks behind now. The rest of the league." You're looking at Notre Dame and Ohio State. You can make the same exact argument. Even honestly, you can make more of an argument that they're behind because they might have guys leave, and those guys who want to leave, they might have to now wait and not be in school semester because of enrollment, and then they're going to have to fill those holes within the spring recruiting window, which isn't as big as the winter recruiting window. It is. On the scale of problems that college football has now, where would you rank teams kind of recovering and trying to manage their rosters after going so far into the playoffs?
I do think it's going to be tricky for them, and that's a great point with bringing up the Belichick quote.
Yeah.
Because people would scoff at that, but I bet you coaches everywhere would nod their heads to it because, I mean, even the, glory years of Husker football, I remember, that win a championship and you'd hear of coaches like, I got to go on the road and recruit, the next day or whatever. Like, I think there was the old story of, Nebraska got beat by Georgia Tech in the Citrus Bowl pretty bad when Osborne was kind of taking it on the chin, and he was like, in the living room pretty soon after trying to recruit Tommy Frazier. There's stuff like that where it just never stops, and so I have no doubt in my mind that Ryan Day at some point, like for a couple hours today at least, maybe he enjoys it till noon or something, but there's some thoughts about, okay, like where it's like Friday Night Lights when Billy Bob's taking the names down, except it's more confusing now. The pieces are just more scattered than ever. So I do think that is going to be difficult for teams that play so long into the year. And of course, I mean, Nebraska's getting after it now as you get into winter conditioning and spring football. Like, I wonder, like, what Ohio State's plan is.
Sure.
Like, when are they back at it? Like, is that 2 weeks from now? Or so they do have a delay in their start, and that's going to be really interesting how it plays out. I do not think they're going to change the calendar for that, though. I don't think they're going to care. I think that's my guess. I just think they're going to the TV and everything. They're going to say this worked out fine for us.
Everybody now is this morning releasing way too early top 25 polls, including 24/7. And there are some new teams that are at the top. Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon are in the top 5. So that's 2 SEC. That's 3 Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Then I look at this list, and you got 24 Illinois. You got 23 Indiana. There's Michigan at 16. And then at number 21 is Nebraska. They're showing up in more of these preseason top 25 polls, which we know don't mean anything, but they're good to keep the conversation going. What does that say about the perception of Nebraska that in your 24/7, they're 21, but off of a 7-6 season, they are showing up in CBS Sports on 3,
mm-hmm.
some of the ones that we are used to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. By the way, I posted one today that was from 24/7 Sports, I guess it was a week ago, that had Nebraska 23rd, and now they're 21st in the 24/7 Sports. So it was a useful week of movement for the Huskers behind the scenes there. Our 24/7 Sports people must have really known something. The Marquise Groves Killebrew decommitment did not hurt them. I mean, I think you got the star power at QB. That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
I think when people sort of make these lists, they're like, okay, who has the names? It goes back to that old NBA on NBC, like promos, like Jordan and the Bulls versus Ewing and the Knicks. You got to like have that name. And so Nebraska's got Riola. I think though the Dana Holgerson factor is pretty interesting to people, outside our bubble, and he is just so respected as an offensive mind, and those who kind of paid attention to the Huskers that don't regularly follow them maybe notice like there was a little uptick in the offensive production, and they suspect Ryle is going to improve even in the year 2. And then I bet there is some who know of the Matt Rhule year 3 and on record and how he's won at least 10 games, at Temple and Baylor. And granted, those were different times in college football, as we've already discussed in this show. But I think that probably is a piece of it that they say, you know what, if you look at his track record, he's won like 1 or 2 the first year, he's won 6 or 7 the second year, and then he wins double digits the third year. So they're one of those teams you want to slide into 21 to 25. And I think people want Nebraska to be back. I actually believe that. I know sometimes Husker fans don't think that, but I think there's certain programs that people have nostalgia for that they miss being like in those type of games and rankings. And I think there's people that want that.
How much of this Nebraska football roster are you in the wait and see mode on in terms of production? And does that lower or do anything to your confidence in the amount of wins that they can get next season in Matt Rhule's 3rd year?
Yeah, I want to stay pretty even on it. I mean, I'm excited about their additions at the skill spots, but I wonder about the defensive line and like how certain guys are going to come along. And I think that's the biggest thing of surviving in this league. When the teams from the Pac-12 joined and we were at Big Ten media days with some of their writers in the summer, Brunson and I would tell those guys, like those USC writers, like you're going to find yourself in like a 17-13 game in Minneapolis, and you're going to be like, how are we here? Like, what has happened? Like, you're going to be in those kind of games in the Big Ten, and you've got to have the guys who, like, within your O-line and D-line can work in the late October and early November, and you still have the depth. And so Ty Robinson is going to be a good draft pick, I think, and Nash obviously gave you a ton of snaps, and there's other guys who departed on that D line, and it's not like you can't replace guys. Yeah. Everybody's got to do it, but I do think that's a concern point until it's not. And there's going to have to be some young players that really step up, and Riley Van Poppel is going to have to be just really solid. And there's all sorts of names you could come along on the D line that are going to have to play well. Same on the O line.
Hey, we'll get you out on this, and this ties into last night's game and then ties back to Dylan Raiola, who I believe a lot of the reason why Nebraska will show up in a lot of preseason polls is because of number 15, and rightfully so. I mean, Nebraska has a quarterback returning. But Riley Leonard, quarterback power last night. My heart did a pitter-patter because I love quarterback power, and we have not seen it on a regular basis here. I thought they could have run Adrian Martinez more with just straight quarterback power or a lead play. But that was a staple of Notre Dame with Riley Leonard. And so running the football from the quarterback before Ohio State adjusted was an advantage. That'll be one of the things of many that we're like, okay, can he do this in year two? Do you envision Nebraska with Dylan having any quarterback power type run game in year number two for a guy that his longest run last year, ironically, against Ohio State for 38 yards?
Mm-hmm. I could see it here and there. I have trouble seeing it being a staple, but I do think he has to have that threat to his game a little bit more this year than last. As far as and some of that's just in the passing game when things break down and just like I'm taking off here and I'm confident in doing so. And obviously some awareness about where the sticks are. You got to grow in that. There was a couple really costly ones where he was a yard short and all that stuff. So I just think there's certain like specifics of the QB run game which he needs to iron out and want to be a part of his game. I think you see it all over the NFL too in the playoffs. There's moments where it makes such a difference to have a guy with some mobility who just the play is not like it was drawn up on the grease board. It's messed up, and the guy just goes and gets you 10 yards when you needed 8, and you continue on with the drive. So that's so big. I know around here, though, we've talked ourselves in circles about the QB run game. There's been times where we said, oh, that's awesome that when they have it. And then we're saying, no, you got to feed the running backs, take those hits off the QB. Like it seems like that switches every year depending what suits Nebraska with their quarterback situation at the time. And I am fully in the camp that it is very beneficial to have a QB who he doesn't have to be Michael Vick, but he gives you that element where the defense has to at least respect it, and it's on film, and they're very aware of it.
That was be still my heart to see quarterback running last night. BC, as always, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Have a great week.
Yeah, you too, guys. Thanks,
Brian.
And the poll is up at 24-7. Thank you, number 15. Some recognition, some name recognition.